farm truck 390 engine, getting ready to put our intake manifold on now. These 390s and pretty much all the FEs, they're pretty tricky for putting the intake manifold on. So what we started out with doing is we have all our mating surfaces cleaned off, and I like to use paint thinners. It's real abrasive and it really breaks down all the oil and gets you a good metal surface to work with for your gasket sealer and your gasket, so you get a really good seal. So we went ahead and did that in preparation. What we also did is, since the distributor goes through the intake manifold and that needs to go on while you're putting the bolts down, we made sure we got it in an orientation where we can slip it in. It comes down and meets up with its seat down here inside the engines. You don't want to be fumbling with that while you're trying to get everything sealed up with gasket sealers. So we're going to go ahead and get moving and get this thing on here. Alright, so we're going ahead and we're putting on our intake manifold gaskets here before we put our intake on. And move this out of the way there so we don't forget about that. But usually these gaskets are biased by the side, but in this case they're backwards. Usually these are the Felpro Prentice-Seal heads, and usually the side that's puckered out faces the head, but on the case of these FE engines, it's actually the opposite way around, so you want to be mindful of that. The stock style heads have a heat crossover port, and you need to have your gaskets lined up with that, and that's really how you get them lined up correctly. You want to pay close attention to that. So anyway, we're going ahead and applying our gasket sealer, and usually I like to only apply my gasket sealer around the water jackets of my gaskets, especially these Prentice-Seal gaskets. They're designed to really do a good job of sealing off the ports where you don't need gasket sealer. And usually you don't want to do this because when it squishes down, you'll have overhanging sealer that's going into the port a little bit, and for high performance engines or engines that you're trying to get performance out of at high RPM, this will obstruct the flow. But this is just basically a farm truck vehicle, so we're not doing any drag racing with it or anything like that. So we're just going to go ahead and go on the safe side and apply gasket seal around all the ports so we know we're good and sealed. But so I'm going to go ahead and go around all these. Again, usually you'd only do the water jackets, but I'm going to go ahead and do all. Then we're going to get this set down, and then I'm going to apply gasket sealer to the intake, and we should be good to go. So anyway, we'll get that done and we'll keep moving right along. Alright, now we're laying a bead of sealer across the deck of the engine. We don't like to use the cork gaskets, and you can read in a lot of places that any variations in the heads and stuff like that, it'll cause problems and it won't seal quite right. So you want to use a liberal amount in this case, a real good and thick bead, and you want to go all the way up to the the ends of the gasket up there. So and again, a really thick bead is important. Gasket sealer expands, but anyway, so that's what we're after. So we're ready to set the intake manifold on. So we'll go ahead and get that lifted up and laid on in there. With that, we went ahead and attached a little handle that we could lift these up with because they're awful heavy. So go ahead and get it lined up. So move forward a little bit, and there it is. And we're landed. Alright, now that we got all our intake manifold bolts in here, just a little bit, just finger tight, we're going to go ahead and put our distributor in, because as we said previously, it goes through the intake manifold. So to properly align this intake manifold, we need our distributor in there as well. So when you're putting it in, you want to make sure that it gets down and firmly seats into the engine, so we're doing that right now. But also note how we have gasket sealer on the underside of the bolt heads of all our bolts. Now before we put these in, we put a little bit of oil on the threads for to get proper torquing, but we did this because the threads, you can see, go down into the engine head. Now this whole area in here has oil running through it where it can be just splashed around, so you want to make sure that you put this sealer on here so that oil isn't leaking out into your intake manifold. So anyway, we're going to keep on moving along here. And here we go. As you can see here, we got our intake manifold on and our distributor seated down in, so we're ready to use our speed handle here and run down all these bolts. Alright, so we got our intake manifold all bolted down, torqued down to 35 foot-pounds. We went to 25 foot-pounds first and we finished it off at 35. We wiped off all our excess gasket sealer, so that looks good. That orange gasket sealer really stands out, but this engine's going to get painted, so that'll get all engine primered and painted over, and that won't be seen anymore. So it's designed for paint to stick to it. So anyway, pretty much that's the end of installing a intake manifold on a FE engine. So you want to make sure that you trim up all this excess gasket here and these lips that come up, so when you put your valve cover gaskets on, it seals up good. So pretty much, and then your gasket sealer will usually squish out to the outside of your gasket, and you can see here create a good seal along that, so you don't really have to worry about that, and it should seal down just with the gasket anyway. So trim those little ears and lips up and you should be good. And that's the end of your FE intake manifold install. So there you go.